I always came to the little coffee shop on the corner at the same time, half an hour before my afternoon shift at the warehouse. It wasn't special, laminate tables, a chipped bell over the door, but the routine felt like something I could hold on to. I'd order the same thing, black coffee and a butter croissant, and sit by the window with my phone turned face down. That's where she first noticed me. Or maybe I only started noticing her. Mid-40s, dark hair gathered loosely. Glasses she kept sliding up her nose with a thumb. She'd sit 2 tables away with a paperback and a thermos she never seemed to drink from. The first time she looked up, I thought she was glancing past me. The second time, I caught her eye. It was the kind of glance that lingers a heartbeat too long to be accidental. "Same order?" she asked one morning, standing behind the counter before the barista arrived. I realized she wasn't just another customer. She was covering the early shift, apron knotted loosely at her waist. "Yeah," I said, awkwardly folding my napkin even though I hadn't spilled anything. "You remembered." She smiled, polite, but there was a flicker of something else, like she'd been waiting to say it. "Hard not to. You're here more than I am." Her voice had that soft rasp people get when they've been up since dawn. She slid the coffee across, our fingers almost touching. I pretended to check my phone. No new messages. The text I'd written to my ex still sat unsent in drafts, the cursor blinking like a question I didn't want to answer. Across the room, she sat again with her paperback. I watched her turn pages with the side of her finger, careful not to crack the spine. Outside, a bus hissed at the curb. Inside, the air smelled like cinnamon and burnt espresso. I wondered if she noticed the way I kept glancing at her hands, the silver ring she twisted absent-mindedly. A couple of days later it rained hard, streaking the window like watercolor. She laughed quietly when I came in soaked. "Looks like you swam here," she said. "Feels like it." I shook off my jacket, water pooling near my boots. She slid a paper towel across the counter. "Here, before you ruin the floor." I took it, our eyes meeting just long enough for me to feel a small, uninvited warmth. "Thanks." We didn't talk much more. Just small comments about the weather, the coffee machine breaking, a joke about how no one ever buys the croissants after noon. But each day she remembered some detail, my shift time, the book I'd been reading, the fact I always left my phone face down. It wasn't flirtation, not exactly. More like she was mapping me without saying so. One morning I noticed her smile looked different, like it was holding something back. Her eyes darted to the door twice before settling on me. When she handed me my coffee, her fingers trembled slightly. I wanted to ask if she was okay, but instead I said, "Busy day?" "Always," she murmured. I sat at my usual window seat, trying not to watch her. My napkin was a small square folded into tighter squares. My phone buzzed once, then stopped. A new message lit the screen. "Could you come by after close? I need a hand with something." No name, just the number she'd scribbled on my receipt a week ago. I stared at it while the coffee cooled, feeling like the room had tilted a little. Her smile across the counter stayed fixed, but her eyes didn't meet mine. The coffee shop felt different after hours. Without customers, the air settled into a hush, the kind you only hear in libraries or train stations at night. The chairs were stacked, lights dimmed except for the glow above the counter. She'd propped the door open for me, hair a little looser, apron already untied. "Thanks for coming," she said, stepping aside so I could slip in. The supplier dropped off boxes and my back's not what it used to be. "I don't mind," I said. "Beats sitting at home." The boxes were light but awkward. We carried them together into the tiny storage room behind the espresso machine. It smelled like cardamom and cleaning solution. As I set one down, my arm brushed hers. Not a spark exactly. More like a jolt of awareness, the kind that makes you hold still a second longer than you should. She noticed. I could tell by the way she cleared her throat. "I should have asked my son," she said, voice soft. "But he's busy." I glanced up. "Your son?" 23. "About your age." She smiled tightly. "He's finishing a degree out of town." I nodded, suddenly aware of the quiet difference between us, not just years, but whole chapters of life. Divorce papers, grown children, routines that shaped who she was. I felt both younger and older standing there, holding a cardboard box like it was proof of something. We unpacked in silence for a while. She opened a jar of loose-leaf tea, the scent filling the room. "I'll make some," she said. "You drink tea?" "Sure." I leaned against the counter, watching her pour hot water into mismatched mugs. She didn't ask how much sugar. She just knew, somehow. 2 spoons. Same as my coffee order. When she handed me the mug, her fingers brushed mine. A microsecond. A micro-behavior. But enough to make my chest feel too tight for a sip. "I used to come here after work," she said, stirring her own tea though it didn't need stirring. "Before I bought it. This place. Back then my husband and I would sit by the window and pretend we had all the time in the world." The tea steamed between us. I tried to picture her younger, laughing at a joke I'd never hear. "What happened?" I asked quietly. She hesitated, then gave a small shrug. "Life. Papers signed. Things packed into boxes. Like these." Her smile held, but her eyes were somewhere else. I wanted to say something. Anything. But the words jammed behind my teeth. Instead, I noticed the faint scar along her thumb, the way she rubbed it when she talked. I imagined her unlocking the shop at dawn, making coffee alone, her thermos a kind of shield. "You ever feel like you're just waiting?" I asked. It slipped out before I could stop it. She looked at me, head tilted. "All the time." Our silence wasn't empty. It was layered. Doubt swam in it. Was this just kindness from an older woman? Was I reading something that wasn't there? Was she? The thought of my own mother flashed in, her warnings about women with baggage, and I felt a pang of guilt sharp enough to make me sip too fast, burning my tongue. She noticed that too. "Careful," she murmured. A small laugh escaped her, not mocking but soft, almost tender. "You're like my son, never patient with hot drinks." I smiled, embarrassed. "Guess not." We finished the tea leaning against opposite counters, our reflections faint in the darkened window. Outside, the rain had stopped. The street was slick, the kind of night where everything looks like a photograph. I put the last box away and wiped my hands on a towel. "All set," I said. "You want me to lock up?" She hesitated, then passed me the key. "Would you?" "I'll finish wiping down." I turned the lock, feeling the click echo in the quiet room. When I handed the key back, she didn't take it right away. Her eyes met mine, steady, searching, and for a second I thought she might say something. Instead, she reached out and smoothed the damp edge of my sleeve, just a quick tug to straighten it. "Can't send you out looking like you swam here again," she said softly. It was nothing. It was everything. A motherly gesture, a casual touch, an unspoken acknowledgement of closeness neither of us had named. Her fingers lingered half a heartbeat too long, then fell away. I don't know why that moment stayed with me. Maybe because it felt like someone finally saw me. The rain hadn't let up. By the time I reached the library that Saturday, my hoodie was damp again, and my hands were cold from carrying the boxes she'd asked for. She'd closed the public section early for a book sorting night, her idea of getting ahead on inventory. Inside, the lights were dimmed except for a pool of glow near the circulation desk. Rows of shelves stood like quiet sentries. She was kneeling on the carpet, sleeves rolled, hair slipping from its clip as she stacked donations into neat piles. A thermos sat open beside her, steam curling upward. "You didn't have to come," she said without looking up. "I wanted to," I replied. My voice sounded smaller than I meant. I set the boxes down, crouched beside her. For a moment it felt like we were alone in a world made of paper and dust. We worked silently. She would hand me a book, our fingers brushing, and I'd slide it into its slot. Little touches, nothing deliberate, but charged anyway. My throat kept tightening, as if my body had already said what my mouth wouldn't. Halfway through the stack she said, quietly, "This was my escape once." Shelving books. No one asking me anything. No one expecting me to smile. She stopped, as if she'd said too much. I didn't answer, just handed her another book. She took it slowly, eyes fixed on the cover but not really seeing it. From somewhere near the front desk a phone buzzed. She startled, wiping her hands on her jeans. "I should check that," she murmured, standing too quickly. Her knee knocked the pile. Books tumbled, thudding softly on the carpet. "You okay?" I asked. She nodded, already moving away. Her shoulders had stiffened, like a door closing. Through the glass I saw a man's shadow pass outside. A customer? A friend? He didn't come in, just paused, then kept walking. She peeked out, lips pressed tight, then returned, smile practiced. False alarm, she said. Sorry. We kept working, but the air had changed. Her movements sharper, mine slower. I wanted to ask who he was, why she looked shaken, but instead I lined up books by call number until the letters blurred. She poured tea into a paper cup, handed it to me without a word. Our fingers touched again. This time she didn't pull back right away. Sometimes I think, she began, then stopped. Her thumb traced the rim of the thermos. I leaned a little closer. Think what? She met my eyes. A beat. Another. The room smelled of wet coats and old paper. She reached up as if to brush something from my hair, but her hand stopped halfway, trembling. Then she laughed softly, a cover sound. Never mind. I could still feel the ghost of her hand near my face. My pulse drummed. Words crowded my throat. What are we doing? What do you want from me? But none of them made it out. We were close enough to whisper, close enough for something to happen. And then the building's heater kicked on with a clank, startling us both back into ourselves. She stepped away, smoothing her sleeve. Another box? She asked, voice light, as if nothing had happened. I nodded. Though my hands shook slightly that we left the library together later than usual, the automatic doors sighing shut behind us. The street was slick from a day of rain, the sky a thin gray just before dark. She held her keys loosely, as if even her grip was tired. Bus won't come for another 20 minutes, I said, glancing down the empty road. She hesitated. I can drive you. Her voice was soft, but there was a flicker of something in it. Maybe guilt, maybe resolve. I followed her to a small hatchback parked under a streetlight. Inside, it smelled faintly of tea and old upholstery. She'd left a book on the passenger seat. She moved it to the back without looking at me. We drove without speaking at first. Wipers whispered across the windshield. Streetlights passed over her face in quick, pale bands. Illumination, shadow, illumination. My hands fidgeted with the hem of my hoodie. Hers stayed steady on the wheel except for one small tremor when we stopped at a light. You're quiet tonight, she said. So are you, I answered. She gave a small huff, halfway to a laugh. Guess that's fair. We turned onto a side street lined with bare trees. The heater clicked softly. I watched her profile, the way her jaw tightened, and thought about the boxes, the thermos, the almost touch of her hand near my hair. A line kept repeating in my head. What are we doing? Can we stop a minute? She asked suddenly. There's a park. She pulled into a nearly empty lot beside a small square of grass and benches slick with drizzle. We sat for a moment with the engine off, the world quiet except for the rain on the roof. I used to bring my son here, she said, when he was little, before everything changed. Her voice faltered. She rubbed her thumb along the steering wheel as if smoothing a crease. He's about your age now. I swallowed. You don't talk about him much. Not easy. She gave a small, sad smile. He wouldn't like this? She didn't say what this was. She didn't need to. I stared at my hands. I don't even know what this is. For a long time neither of us spoke. The heater ticked as it cooled. Outside, water gathered in the cracks of the pavement, reflecting the dull glow of the streetlight. I thought about my ex's name still in my drafts, unsent. About the look on her face tonight when the shadow passed outside the library window. She exhaled slowly, as if bracing herself. Sometimes I catch myself waiting for you to come in, she said, like it's the best part of my day. And then I think, God, what am I doing? My chest tightened. I could feel every pulse in my neck. I wait for it too, I said quietly. Seeing you. She looked at me then, really looked. Her eyes glistened, not with tears exactly, but with something unsaid. I'm old enough to know better, she murmured. I'm not sure I know anything, I said. We both laughed softly at that, but it wasn't funny. It was a release. She leaned back, staring at the ceiling. Do you ever think about? She began, then stopped. Her fingers tapped the steering wheel, a nervous rhythm. Never mind. I turned a little toward her. About what? Her hand fell still. She didn't answer. The silence thickened. I could feel the space between us shrink even though we hadn't moved. She reached for the keys, but didn't turn them. I'm scared, she said finally, barely above a whisper. Not of you. of what this could do. I wanted to reach for her hand. I didn't. My knuckles brushed the seat instead, a ghost of the gesture. I don't want to mess up your life, I said. The words felt small but heavy. She closed her eyes, drew a long breath. You already changed it, she said. The heater clicked again. A drop of water slid down the inside of the windshield where our breath had fogged it. Her fingers flexed on the wheel, then released, hanging midair between us. I thought she might turn, or speak, or reach across the space. I thought I might. Instead, we sat there, caught in a moment so thin it felt like glass. Her eyes opened, fixed on mine. Tell me, she said softly, and then stopped, like she wasn't sure what she wanted me to tell. The question hung there, unspoken, waiting. The library felt hollow without her. No thermos on the counter, no quiet voice behind me. Just the low hum of fluorescent lights and the echo of my own footsteps. She'd texted 2 nights ago, a clipped message. Can't make tomorrow. Sorry. No explanation. No follow-up. I kept showing up anyway, stacking returns, straightening shelves, telling myself it was for the paycheck. But the silence was louder than the work. By the 4th evening, I asked one of the other clerks if she was sick. She's fine, he said. Family stuff, I think. He didn't elaborate. Neither did I. I tried to picture her at home. Maybe her son had come back. Maybe someone else had. The image made my stomach tighten. A man in her kitchen, hand on her thermos lid, easy smile. When she finally reappeared, a week later, she looked different. Hair tied tight, neutral lipstick, crisp shirt instead of her usual sweater. She moved briskly, as if speed alone could erase the gap between us. Hi, I said. Hi. She answered without meeting my eyes. I waited for her to explain, but she just began unloading a crate of new books, scanning barcodes. Her sleeves stayed rolled down even though the room was warm. I wanted to ask where were you, but the words stayed behind my teeth. Instead, I muttered something about the heater still clanking. She gave a small nod. I've noticed. That night we closed together, but she didn't offer tea, didn't linger. When I reached for the light switch, she was already at the door, keys in hand. You don't need a ride? I asked. I'm fine, she said. Thank you, and walked out. I stood there a moment longer than I should, listening to the echo fade. The next day, I arrived late on purpose. She was already behind the counter, face bent over paperwork. No glance up, no half smile, only a polite afternoon. I shelved books in the back, fingers slipping on the spines. I kept replaying our last night in the car, the unspoken question, the half-reach of her hand. Had I done something? Had she decided? Halfway through my shift, she appeared in the aisle holding a stack. Could you take these upstairs? She asked. Her tone was neutral, but her knuckles were white around the books. Sure, I said. Our eyes met briefly. Hers were tired, guarded. Upstairs smelled of old paper and dust. I stayed there longer than necessary, running my hand along the shelves, hoping she'd follow, hoping she wouldn't. Later, while emptying the drop box, I found a paperback I recognized, one she'd recommended to me weeks ago. Inside the cover was a note in her handwriting. Keep this one. It helped once. No greeting, no signature. Just that line. I slipped it into my bag without thinking, like it was contraband. Walking home, the evening felt blurred, edges softened by drizzle. My phone buzzed. A draft I'd written days ago stared back at me. Are you okay? Did I do something? I typed it, but never hit send. The cursor blinked, steady, patient. I deleted it. Wrote it again. Deleted it. My thumb hovered over send until the screen dimmed. 2 days passed. She switched shifts with someone else. My hours were cut. The library felt like a room I'd been gently pushed out of. On Friday, I stood outside the coffee shop before work, watching the bell above the door sway with each opening. She wasn't there. The seat by the window sat empty, the light falling across it like a memory I couldn't step into. I took a different seat, ordered tea instead of coffee, folded the napkin into a square, then a smaller square, then another. My phone lay face down on the table. I didn't feel heartbroken. I felt paused, like life forgot to finish the sentence. Outside, buses hissed at the curb. Inside, the cup cooled in my hands. I thought about knocking on her apartment door, thought about leaving the book on the step, thought about sending the message. Instead, I stayed where I was, staring at the empty seat across from me until the bell chimed again. The IT was late when I finally walked up the narrow stairwell to her apartment. I didn't plan to, not exactly. My shift had ended hours earlier. The book she'd left for me was still in my bag, its pages bent from the rain. I stood outside her door for a long time, listening. No TV, no music, just the faint clink of dishes from inside. I knocked once lightly, almost left before she answered. When the door opened, she looked surprised but not startled. Her hair was pulled back, no makeup, an oversized sweater slipping off one shoulder. The smell of tea drifted from somewhere behind her. She began, then stopped. Do you want to come in? I nodded. My heart felt like it was trying to climb my throat. Her kitchen was small, cluttered with mugs and unopened mail. She gestured to a chair but stayed standing, hands gripping the edge of the counter as if bracing herself. I didn't think you'd, she started, then tried again. I switched shifts. I thought it'd be easier. I set the book on the table between us. You left this in the drop box. She gave a small, rueful laugh. Not exactly subtle. Silence stretched. She poured tea into 2 mugs, pushing one toward me without sitting down. I wrapped my hands around the cup just to have something to do. You didn't do anything wrong, she said finally, staring into her mug. I just needed space. My son came back for a few days. He asked about you. I didn't know what to say. That I work at the library? I tried to smile, but it felt thin. Her eyes flicked up, then down again. That you matter. That's harder. The words landed heavy but gentle. I looked at the steam rising from my mug. I kept thinking I'd send a message. Ask if you were okay. Why didn't you? She asked. I didn't know if you wanted me to. She exhaled, leaning back against the counter. I wanted to, and I didn't. You're young. You have a whole life. She shook her head. It's not supposed to happen like this. I stood slowly. The kitchen felt too small for both of us sitting. I don't know what this is, I said, but it's the only thing that's felt like something in a long time. She closed her eyes, fingers tightening on the counter. It scares me. Because I like you. Because if I let myself, I might. She stopped. I might forget how old I am. What I owe. I took a step closer, careful, like approaching a skittish animal. You don't owe me anything, I said quietly. I just wanted to know if you were okay. She opened her eyes. For a moment we just looked at each other, breathing the same air. Then she laughed softly, not unkind. We're ridiculous, she murmured. Yeah, I said. But here we are. Her hand left the counter, hovered in the air between us. I didn't reach for it. Neither did she. We stayed like that, suspended, until finally she let it drop and brushed past me to the table. She sat down, shoulders folding inward, and gestured for me to sit too. I can't promise anything, she said. I don't even know what I want. I'm not asking for a promise, I said. Just honesty. She nodded slowly. Then honesty, I think about you. More than I should. And it feels like standing on a ledge. I felt my throat tighten. Me too. Another silence, but softer now. She reached across the table and nudged the mug a little closer to me. A tiny gesture like she was giving me something she couldn't name. Drink before it goes cold, she said. I took a sip. Warm, bitter, real. We sat like that. No big declarations, no plans. Just 2 people who'd finally said enough to stop pretending. Her foot brushed mine under the table, not deliberate, not withdrawn. We both felt it and didn't move. After a while she looked up. Okay, she asked. I swallowed, nodded once. Okay. And for the first time in weeks, the pause between us didn't feel like an absence. It felt like a breath. The first morning back felt almost like before. 8:47 a.m. Drizzle on the coffee shop window, the bell's familiar chime. But everything had shifted under the surface. I walked in out of habit, expecting the empty seat by the window. Instead, she was already there, sweater sleeves pushed up, a paperback face down beside her cup. Black coffee for me, tea for her. 2 croissants between us, still warm. You're early, I said. You're late, she replied, smiling just enough to make it feel like a private joke. We didn't rush. I folded the napkin into a square, then a smaller square. She watched me do it, sliding her thermos aside like she used to in the library's back room. No big gestures, No explanations. Just a slow return. Months had passed since the night in her kitchen. I'd switched to morning shifts. She'd hired another clerk. We saw each other less, but we'd stopped disappearing. Small texts. A book recommendation. A shared bench at the park when our paths crossed. Nothing dramatic, just steady threads weaving back together. Today she handed me a library receipt with a number scrawled on the back. New hours, she said. If you want to drop by. Her voice was casual, but her thumb lingered on the paper as I took it. I've been meaning to return this. I slid the paper back she'd left me across the table. Inside, tucked at page 73, was a tea bag wrapper she must have used as a bookmark. She laughed softly when she saw it. I wondered where that went, she said. We drank in companionable silence. Outside, a bus hissed at the curb. Inside, steam curled from our mugs. I caught myself glancing at her hands again. The silver ring now gone. A faint tan line where it had been. She noticed and didn't look away. I don't know what to call this, I said quietly, but I like it. She reached over and smoothed the edge of my sleeve, like she had that night after sorting boxes. You don't have to call it anything, she said. Just be here. It wasn't a declaration. It didn't need to be. The space between us felt grounded, no longer a ledge, but a step. We walked later to the small park, the same bench where she'd once told me about her son. The trees were beginning to leaf out. She sat first, patting the space beside her. I sat, our shoulders almost touching. He called last night, she said. My son. Asked how I was doing. What did you tell him? That I'm figuring things out, she said. That I'm okay. We watched a child chase pigeons across the wet pavement. She chuckled under her breath, a sound like tea poured into a cup. I felt the quiet pull of her presence, not a rush, not a cliff edge, but a tide finding its shape. Do you ever miss the late shifts? I asked. Sometimes, she said, but I like mornings now. Even the 8:47 bus. She tilted her head, smiling at our private timestamp. We sat there until the clouds broke. She reached into her bag and pulled out a thermos, unscrewing the lid. Tea, she offered. Black coffee, I teased. But okay. We traded sips, a small, human exchange that felt larger than it looked. When she set the thermos down, our fingers stayed close enough for warmth. Not touching, not needing to. I thought of that first text she sent. Could you come by after close? And how far we'd come since then. Not a straight line, but a slow, imperfect circle. She'd let herself be seen. I'd learned to stay. We hadn't named it, but we'd earned it. She glanced at me, eyes soft. Ready? She asked. I nodded. Yeah. We rose from the bench together. No script, no plan beyond the next small step. And in that moment, it felt like enough. Later, when I remembered the morning, 8:47 a.m., drizzle on the window, thermos between us, I realized it wasn't the coffee or the tea or the bench that stayed with me. It was the pause that had finally become a breath. Something only we would understand.